So, how you doing, Philip? So, I've got Philip Abraham here. So, he is the founder of Cloudface, and also probably going to give you a new term, a new title. You're like the director, president, chief supply chain officer of Calero. So, I might have to just give you all of them right now with your intellect
Okay.
and your experience. Thanks for taking the time out. Really appreciate it. I know it's quite early your side. So ultimately, what I want to do is really get into finding more about your background, and I think that would help in terms of the audience. So, can you tell me more about yourself and where you've come from and what you're doing today?
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm a 40-year supply chain visionary and a cybersecurity visionary. So to kind of shorten this up a little bit, because I could talk for hours about these things, I actually created the first ever supply chain software in the world,
Wow.
which is now called Manugistics. And I did that about 38 years ago, and that's used all around the world. I did all of Kmart, all of Walmart,
We need to
all
just
of,
say that again. The first ever supply chain software in the world.
yes,
Wow.
it's
See, I know this,
Manugistics.
but I want to make sure everyone else knows this. Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, Manugistics, it's really interesting because um, I created that 38 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I moved the entire Kmart Corporation
Wow.
to the cloud before there was a cloud.
Yes.
And that was when Kmart was the largest retailer in the world.
Hmm.
And there's a very interesting article on that from D Business magazine called From the Rafters to the Cloud.
Okay.
And I can electronically send you a
To the
copy.
cloud, please do. Yes.
Yeah, Rafters to the Cloud. Very interesting article. And I will forward that. And so, from there I did, a lot of things for Walmart, General Motors, and really wrestling these complex organizations to the ground and then to help build them back up in the
Hmm.
supply chain. And then also um, been very deep in the healthcare supply chain and technology. Also, by the way, I did my thesis paper in grad school. This is very interesting. I did my thesis on running companies without software, eliminating IT departments, and making complex corporations disappear. And I was initially doing that to strengthen supply chains. I really want to go to the next level. And then by default, I became a world class cybersecurity expert because I began to look at the 7 layers of the OSI stack, and I found a way to make layers 3 through 7 disappear and utilize 2, which makes it very, very hard for hackers to penetrate anything that I implement. And so by default, in my quest to make supply chain stronger, as I became a cyber expert. And so now we at Calero, we're going to be able to really integrate supply chain and cybersecurity in a way that's going to greatly boost the Calero clients. And if it's okay, I'd like to hold up this Wall Street Journal
Sure.
um, today. Let me see here.
So
The
today's the
title is,
22nd of May,
yep,
2019. Yeah, please.
and it's page A is in Apple 3.
Okay.
And the title says Ransomware keeps Baltimore locked up.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, Baltimore, Maryland, the reason I'm showing that, Baltimore, Maryland has been in an absolute lockdown because of ransomware.
Mm.
Last year, I presented to Homeland Security, the governor of Maryland, and Maryland's top cyber experts. And I pleaded with them to use this solution that I created. And they didn't want to use it. And I was a little miffed.
Yes. What,
Big
what
picture,
what
I
reasons do they
understand.
give? What reasons do they give? I know sometimes when people are trying to provide, let's just say, a preactive measure that people can be able to implement, they're always kind of like ad hoc. So what were the reasons why they pushed back in not utilizing the software?
Well, they were real clever in not getting, actually caught giving a reason.
Okay.
But what the reason was, they indicated that, well, we're really kind of entrenched in what we're doing.
Mm.
And so I explained to them that they need to stop immediately, throw it out, and change course. Now, all the citizens of Baltimore and the government there is completely shut down. And so they're paying a price
Wow.
because they didn't want to step up to the plate and make that slight pivot. I didn't ask them to change every single thing they're doing, just make a small pivot because of the artificial intelligence, blockchain, the cryptocurrencies, the 7 layers of the OSI stack. Just a slight change would have prevented any of this from happening. And so now it's all over the Wall Street Journal. It's in all these other articles, and it's just, it's painful for them. And I'm only bringing that up because people have to understand a lot of this ransomware originates in the supply chain. People don't want to talk about that, but they originate in the supply chain. And that's why I did so much work professionally and academically on flushing out and removing technology from the supply chain and bringing in world-class cyber solutions to the supply chain so that the supply chain is much more stronger and much more secure, and then more profitable. ROI is quicker, and you have just a much better world to work in. It's just one of these things, Kenneth, that you have to do.
Yes. So give us an example of this process that a lot of people are not really aware of and how it impacts the supply chain from let's say from the supplier, all the way to the end consumer. Giving us a clear example, because obviously there's a lot of people in the supply chain industry that's watching, and we know how impactful supply chain is. It accounts for a huge amount of the GDP. So just give us a clear example of what's really going on.
Well, one of the things that when I was in front of Homeland Security, I said to them, the face of terrorism and the face of ransomware really is more than just what they've been trying to teach us to think about. It's blue chip companies like IBM and healthcare companies and Johnson & Johnson. And then because they're selling software and consulting services to the greater supply chain, knowing their software is not going to protect. So they're chasing the sale. They're making millions of dollars, but they've really crippled the supply chain. So the ransomware and the hackers come in through the supply chain because these blue chip companies are allowing it to come in. Then the second issue is you have supply chains that are using many, many off-the-shelf software systems in an effort to, one, try to run their business, but also to please their customers. So some of their customers say, well, we want you to have this software system. Well, all known off-the-shelf software systems are like Swiss cheese. And so is anybody talking about this in the supply chain? Absolutely not, right? But and you're hearing it from me, and I have the research and the facts to support this, but all known off-the-shelf software systems for non-supply chain and for supply chain are known tools for hacking and ransomware, period. And this has all been investigated and researched, and so now you've got these supply chains that are operating like Swiss cheese. And what they're trying to do is they're saying, well, let's move freight. Let's pick up a product, whether it's food, lettuce, carrots, whatever, or car parts for General Motors, or healthcare for hospitals and things like this. Let's just move the product like we did in the 70s, like we did in the 80s. Well, guess what? We didn't have hackers in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
Hackers are controlling everything right now. And the transition to this new model is mandatory for the supply chain executives. I'm a world class supply chain expert, and I try to tell all supply chain people the bad news is you're not moving quick enough.
Mm.
The good news is the transition to a safe, productive, and secure supply chain is very easy to do.
Yeah.
That's the good news. It's not like it's hard. You don't have to go back to college. You know, it's very easy to do. I've worked all the bugs out. I devoted 40 years to this topic, and you can quickly migrate your supply chain over and be ready for the very quickly coming around the corner is the blockchain and cryptocurrency as it relates to the supply chain, which is why I'm so excited about Calero, because Calero is going to have and does have that next generation blockchain cryptocurrency supply chain that is also insanely secure. So there's your solution. It's just going to be that easy. So
why do you
so
think
now it's an
someone?
emotional.
Why do you think someone would want to utilize a platform such as ours, Calero Technologies, in terms of combining the blockchain with the supply chain, and then taking away their legacy systems or off-the-shelf softwares to really utilize what we have?
What was the first part of the question?
Why do you think someone would want to implement this?
I could tell you right now, if this article again, Wall Street Journal, okay, just because they're talking about Baltimore, the city, right? Well, Baltimore has a huge supply chain.
Yes.
They also have huge companies that work in Baltimore. So it's more than just the city of Baltimore, which is in the state of Maryland. It's many, many companies that have trucks and trailers and warehouses and supply chains. So one of the reasons that you want to get on board is, do you know what this is going to do to your supply chain costs? Most supply chains are operating on thin margins as it is. And now, how would you like to have your supply chain shut down? I mean, you know what that's going to do to a big trucking company or railroad or air, ocean going, and the food that's in the food that's on these trailers and these warehouses, the other products, things like that, it all gets shut down. And like in healthcare, when ransomware hits a hospital, for the healthcare supply chain people out there, it shuts the whole hospital down, just like Baltimore shut down. So now you have a big hospital. They can't see patients. They can't fill prescriptions. They can't read or send emails. Everything's shut down.
So give us an example how ransomware, how a hacker can actually enter the system and then get to a point of really impacting a whole hospital.
Yeah, good, because I have specific knowledge on this. We have the only known solution to protect hospitals. But here's an example. The first important thing I want to mention is the traditional bureaucracies, the traditional, the companies are selling software. They keep trying to put it on the hospital, and they say, well, you have disgruntled employees, or you're not doing enough what they call pen testing or penetration testing. But that's not what my research shows. My research shows that it's not the disgruntled employee, not to say there isn't a disgruntled employee out there. It's not the disgruntled employee, and it's not so much the lack of pen testing. The truth of the matter is, my research shows that more than 90% of the hackers come in through the supply chain. And I'll give you a couple examples. The hacker comes in at Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson is going to ship a truckload of Band-Aids, let's say.
Yes.
Or any one of their products to the hospital. And it goes through a distributor and the group purchasing organizations, which is another known problem people need to stay away from in healthcare. But the GPOs get involved, and then the Band-Aids get to the hospital, and then they also get so the hacker gets it at J&J. It follows the invoice through the system. It then jumps into the hospital because the hospital wants the
Okay,
invoice to
so there was
match
a loophole, or there was lapse in the security from J&J. Then it's in the
Yeah,
system, and then it then moves along the supply chain.
right.
Yes.
And so then, meanwhile, the hospital's saying, well, we got to make sure we don't have disgruntled employees, and maybe we should do more pen testing and things like that. Penetration testing, meaning, is a disgruntled employee going to be able to attack us, right? But that's not, the disgruntled employee is not going to shut the hospital down. The ransomware people will. So that they grab onto that invoice, they're following the supply chain. They're now in the hospital because the hospital needs to see the invoice to match it up with the truckload of Band-Aids. But here's what really accelerates. It then follows through every department in the hospital. It jumps over to Blue Cross Blue Shield as an example, because as supporting documents, because the hospital wants to be reimbursed. Maybe somebody broke their leg and Blue Cross is going to pay for it. And then Blue Cross uploads information to, let's say, General Motors. Now the hacker's sitting in General Motors. And another thing people don't know is any car that's a 2016 or newer, hackers can take over the car while you're driving it and drive you right off the freeway or drive you through a building.
Yes.
So now the hacker that started at J&J goes through the whole system, through the hospital, through Blue Cross Blue Shield, jumps over to Ford Motor or GM, and now it's in the car. And I explained all this to Homeland Security when I did my presentation, that now not only are they shutting the hospital down, but they're going to take over many, many cars and do damage. So what I try to tell the younger supply chain executives is, you have to be more than just a supply chain person now. You have to understand cybersecurity, and you have to understand it's so critical. You can't just say, well, okay, IBM's going to sell us some blockchain and or cryptocurrency, so we'll buy it from them. Not a good idea. Bad idea. You're just revisiting last year's mistakes. What you need to do is be able to understand, listen to like this podcast, challenge me, challenge Calero, challenge us to produce facts and figures and information, and then kind of have a throwdown. Say, well, Calero's saying they're going to do all this stuff, but, IBM says they're going to do it too. And so have a throwdown. Have the Calero solution up on the board, have someone else's solution on the board, and call Phil Abraham on the carpet. Say, come on, let's have a throwdown,
Yes.
Phil. And that's what the supply chain guys, my advice to them is that as you move forward now, and let's say you're a younger person and you want to have a long career in the supply chain, well, you're not going to have any career in the supply chain if you don't ever overcome this. This is the number one critical issue for supply chain people today.
So walk us through the 7 pillars that you mentioned of cybersecurity and where we play. Because what I like to do is with this podcast is, I fully know what it is, but just for the audience is really speaking to you, finding critiques, seeing which ways, because the only way that we can grow, especially as individuals and obviously as an organization, what we're building, is that we can be able to try and find any holes whatsoever. So break down to the audience in terms of the pillars and which level we are at and how we're implementing it to help businesses.
Okay. Well, one thing the listeners can do when they get a chance is they can, Google the 7 layers of the OSI stack and then click on images. And they'll quickly start to get a visual of what are the 7 layers. But to briefly go over them. Layer 1 is your power source. Your laptop's running low, and so you're plugging it in. And layer 7 is presentation. So if you go Domino's.com, you hope to see a pizza. So we know what 1 is, we know what 7 is. Layers 3 through 7 is where all of your software applications are sitting. So whether it's your Bank of America or your UPS or software that McDonald's restaurants are using, all this is sitting through 3 through 7. Layer 2 is kind of the unknown. It's layer 2 is the unknown in the sense that currently your Cisco routers are sitting in layer 2. So like if someone in layer 7 says, I need to look at Domino's.com, there's a shout out that goes down through the 7 layers and goes to layer 2 and says, find that for me. Find that. So the routers find it in 2 and they kick it upstairs. And before it gets to presentation, it may go through a series of stops in 3, 4, 5, and 6, depending what software they're using. Okay. And so what I worked on is I said, well, what if we take the 7 layers and move them all around? Or what if we don't use layers 3 through 7 and only use layer 2? And so if you want to be in the world where Calero is, Calero can operate in all 7 layers, or Calero could operate in just layer 2. So if customers aren't ready yet, they can still become really secure and climb up the supply chain execution ladder with Calero, utilizing their current systems. But phase 2, they need to understand that they're going to have to rewrite their agreements and contracts in a way that starts to favor, let's say, layer 2 over layers 3 through 7. So it seems like a complex transition, but what we've done at Calero is we've thought it through, we've researched it, we've beta tested it. I've already tested this out in the marketplace, so we can make that transition seamless and easy. So although it's like, oh my gosh, there's 7 layers of the stack, what am I going to do? That's okay, because if there's 1,000 steps to take, we've reduced it to 3 or 4. Because why? We're really good at what we do at Calero. We've worked through the math. We've worked through the processes, practices, and procedures so that supply chain companies can continue doing what they do. Move product safely, utilize crypto, utilize blockchain, because quite frankly, board members all over the United States and all around the world are saying to their supply chains right now today, we want you to migrate to blockchain, and you also have to be secure.
Very true. So it works hand in hand, right? It's interesting that obviously over the last couple of years, blockchain has really become this kind of buzzword, yes? But actually, one of the main industries that's ripe for disruption is the supply chain industry. Because there's a clear area where there's problems that exist. There are so many different people or stakeholders within the equation. So to be able to provide something that involves having data, which is immutable, which is stored in a decentralized ledger, which provides that transparency, that traceability when you're moving goods from one place to the next. Why do you think? Because obviously now, especially from the e-commerce aspect, 2018, 2019, 10% of all global sales is done online, e-commerce. Within the next 5 years, that's going to go from 10% to 15%, which would be about $4.2 trillion worth of sales. So, i.e., the amount of merchants third-party merchants on Amazon, on eBay, on Shopify, they're obviously purchasing goods. So they have to really fully understand, even as a small business, not even talk about the large multinational corporations that deal with supply chain, even the SMBs that are acquiring goods from China, for example, yes, to other countries, from perishable goods to electrical goods. So where would that come into the equation? Because you and I know what we're building. We're building something phenomenal. But why do you feel what we're doing can actually also help the SMBs on the other end of the spectrum?
Oh, well, I can tell you right now, that group has a dilemma on their hands that Calero can fix.
Big time.
And their dilemma is, again, they are going to be mandated to transition. But here's their challenge. In all of my research, Calero has the only solution that will absolutely work. And if only half worked, I'd say it only half works, but at 100% work. And even Amazon now is reaching out to me. So Amazon doesn't want people to Amazon doesn't want people to know this.
I'm telling you.
But their system is nowhere near as secure as they're telling everyone.
We'll keep it between you and I and the audience.
So we'll keep it this here. But my point is, let's just talk about the supply chain guys, people. They have to understand that they need to be proactive and take ownership on this, because they're going to be mandated to change, and they're going to think that they'll be safe if they go with the traditional blue chip type, US based companies and, third party logistics firms and things like that. They're just going to blow up and have a big disaster on their hands.
Yes.
And so I can't stress enough to the supply chain executives out there, their number one priority is what we're discussing on this phone today. And once they get that figured out, they can go back to doing cool supply chain stuff. So, the days of just saying, well, I'm a director of supply chain or I'm a vice president of supply chain, so I'm just going to go to work and do my supply chain stuff, that's not going to get it done. Because your numbers you just threw out there about $4 trillion, $5 trillion. I mean, this is going to just grow, big time. And it's the migration is here now. We're migrating over. The solutions are very, very few, very, very few.
And how would you find it? Because obviously what we're now seeing is that there's also a growing trend regarding sustainability. And people are really trying to identify and know, before they purchase any goods, food, anything you ingest, to understand where it's actually coming from. There's been huge amount of outbreaks that's happening, E. coli. So people now, and I'm in Vienna, Austria, yeah. So in Europe, in the UK, there's a massive trend of people like vegans, and people really focus on organic goods and 100% natural, no pesticides. So where do you feel this is going? Because obviously what we're building at Calero Technologies, in addition to the cybersecurity and the supply chain, we're also helping the merchants communicate effectively with the suppliers in terms of where the goods are actually coming from. So when you go on Amazon or eBay or Shopify, and then when you see under the product description that this toothpaste, they say it's FDA approved, or this is 100% natural, but how do you really know? So now it's like, back what you're saying now with proof. And this is, people are going to really be in a difficult situation, because now everyone's going to say, okay, you say that this is 100% natural, it's vegan, it's this, that. Show me proof. Show me the documentation. And we are enabling suppliers to build up this information in an easy, simple user interface, and then can be able to create it as a QR code. So i.e., if you're producing coffee beans or cocoa, you can be able to then identify the specific acres of land, take a picture, your location is GPS tracked. You can be able to video the manufacturing plant so people can clearly see. You can upload all of the documentation to make sure that you're verified. Food and safety has standards. All of this information will be uploaded via the Calero Technologies platform. And then this can be then stored as a hash on the blockchain, which provides proof that this information was uploaded. And then we'll then have a QR code, which as a plugin stored on the product description page on the merchant. So if you're a consumer and you see this is the information in text, you need to go beyond that now. We need to build this trust. So what consumers will do is basically scan the QR code from the comfort of their own home, and then it'll go back in history to know where this product was actually cultivated, harvested, who produced it. Is this document actually FDA approved? And within Calero, we are going to verify that. So we'll have all the agencies and verify. And we're going to have verified by Calero to show that before you make the purchase, we've done the full due diligence. So how do you see this whole thing? Because no one's actually doing what we're doing now. So where do you see this whole thing moving?
Wow. Great
I didn't even want to say this, to be honest, but it was just, this is something that was really fulfilling.
Let me tell you something. That is the only important question you just threw at me.
Yes.
For, the market we're talking to today, like these supply chain executives. And that is the number one question. And the market is moving just like you laid it all out. The customer wants it because everyone's being poisoned by food all day long now. At the low end, it's showing up in increases in gluten sensitivities. At the high end, it's, much more serious issues. And it's showing up in so many areas that when you peel the onion back, it at the end of the day, it's going to fall in the supply chain lap. And that it's unfortunate. I'm prepared for it. I did my homework, and Calero's prepared for it. But the supply chain executives, what they don't understand, the days of saying, well, we were hacked today, that must be the IT department's fault.
Yes.
Or we're held hostage by ransomware. That must be our cyber security team's fault. I tell supply chain guys that finance and the board of directors will not accept that apology out of the supply chain executives. When a company's customers are being poisoned, they're now going to drag the supply chain executives in the room and say, why aren't you putting systems in place?
Agreed.
And being proactive on this?
Absolutely.
And that's why I tell the younger supply chain people, I say, listen, the days of just saying, well, I moved the 3 truckloads of freight, from Detroit to Cleveland. Well, normally you'd get an attaboy. Everybody would be happy. That doesn't cut it anymore.
No.
You may have moved the freight, but you poisoned everybody in Cleveland.
True.
Or you shut the company down, or finance got hacked. And they're going to find out it came through your supply vendors. So this is a very significant transition in the history of supply chain management right now.
So
very significant.
Yeah. So what could you say? Because obviously we've covered quite a lot of areas now, and this is, I think we can clearly see where everything's moving to in terms of the systems that one needs to be put in place, irrespective of the size of your organization. But then in addition to that, the whole cybersecurity, we're aware of ransomware. You just showed, today, the news that happened in Baltimore, which is sad. And then obviously from the e-commerce aspect. So, because what tends to happen, people always just focus just on the end part of the supply chain, but also look at the consumer's aspect. Look at where everything is moving in terms of this omni-channel synergies in terms of offline supply chain and also the online contact base. So building that, let's just say that connection, that cooperation between both, and having this data. And I think people also forget about real-time information. What happened was last year in Austria, there was an outbreak with cherry tomatoes. And it happened in one supermarket. They had to shut down selling all cherry tomatoes in the whole country because they wasn't really aware of where it was actually coming from. It took them 2 weeks to find out it was coming from a small village in a country in Europe. But with our technology, you can be able to trace in real time where every single product is coming from and knowing instantly what changes to make. And it's not just from a produce aspect, but this is also things such as beverages, such as things, cosmetics, creams, shampoo. We're seeing this whole new talk, especially with legalization of cannabis in Canada, with recreational, with medicinal, CBD, hemmed oils. We're seeing a lot of products being sold that say that can be able to treat your osteoporosis, epilepsy and back pain. But a lot of these products are counterfeits. A lot of these products there's no real use case that actually really going to have an impact. So people need to start having some accountability right now. And this is, I feel, this is where we come into the whole equation.
Yeah, 100. It's I can't stress the importance. The Calero solution is here to stay, and governments are mandating this. That's the key here. They're mandating this.
So when you say mandate, what do you mean mandate? You mean they're putting rules or regulations or what?
I've been lucky enough to work with some NSA people and CIA people.
NSA, CIA. See?
Yeah.
Guys? Seems like we just got...
You know what's funny? You know what just happened?
See what just happened there? You just said NSA, CIA, and you just got cut off.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But you know what the phone call was from Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh no. Wow.
And I'm like, you can't make this up. But anyways, you can't make it up. And
I thought you just said NSA, and then all of a sudden, NSA's like keeping the air out.
Yeah, well, yeah, they'll do that to me too. But I want to say about the NSA and CIA reached out to me and a lot of stuff. But the thing that's important for this podcast is there is a significant mandated driven initiatives specifically designed to completely disrupt all known current software and hardware being used.
Wow.
And so a lot of people, no one really knows this, but it's important for this phone call. So it's not like I'm, tattletaling.
Yeah.
But what I want people to know, because I'm in the middle of it, I want people to know that it's not just Phil Abraham telling you that all known software is hacked, and also all known hardware, including the routers and the switches. So, you got kind of two ends. You got that kind of yucky back end hardware, switches, routers, all that stuff. It's all been compromised. And then at the other end, your software has all been compromised. Now, all of it's going to be torn out and required to be changed right now as we speak.
Wow.
That's going on. And I'm in the middle of those conversations. So being a lifelong supply chain guy, even though I went back to school for a lot of technology, but as a lifelong supply chain guy, I'm almost like panicked. I'm trying to get the word out to supply chain people. You need to take ownership of this. Do your homework. Get on the Calero bandwagon. Get your homework done. Get your research. If you're not going to use Calero, then you better make sure whoever you are going to use is better than Calero.
Agreed.
You don't want to not use Calero and pick somebody less than Calero.
Yeah.
That'll just make it worse for you. But I wanted the audience to know that there is significant things being done behind the scenes that support why you're going to want to use Calero.
Wow. We won't go too much into the CIA and NASA. Yeah. We'll keep that.
Because they'll delete this call. The whole thing never even happened.
I know. You won't see me tomorrow.
Yeah. So but to my supply chain buddies out there and friends, you got to get ready to make the switch quick.
Yes.
Because it takes time, right?
Yeah. So
you can't do it. You need to do it by tomorrow, but you obviously can't, right? Yes. But you don't have more than a year. I can tell you that much. The chief boogeyman's going to show up, and it's not going to be, in the old days, you'd have 10, 15 years to make a change.
Of course.
Now I'm saying you got 10 to 15 months.
Moore's law. Things are moving fast, quick.
It's just moving fast. And it's all I could say.
No. Right. Philip, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Obviously, when people need to find out, where can they actually reach you if they want to get in touch with you to find out more?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, of course.
Yeah.
Philip Abraham, and find me on LinkedIn. My Gmail address is pabraham6@gmail.com.
Got it.
They can grab me at Calero.
Yeah.
They can get to you. My cell phone number. I mean, I don't care if people call me.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place. But the main thing I want people to know is I'm here for them.
Respect.
I really, truly want to help make everyone's life better.
Respect.
So, yeah, that's all I really want to do is help.
Great. Philip, thanks for your time. And
Thank you.
obviously, we'll get back to work now, trying to
Okay.
help and change the world. Thanks a lot. Speak to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.